Oklahoma Sooners fans, college football fans, welcome into Oklahoma at the voice of college football. This is Oklahoma Sooners Live. Very excited to get into it tonight. We have a ton to touch up on. This was the week that just put me into a frenzy, having a really hard time trying to zone down exactly what my predictions were going to be. Speaking of, put your predictions in the chat. I'm looking at predictions, trying to get zone in on this game. I mean, this was probably the toughest preview that I've had to put together all season long, and the main reason being is that we've had such an up and down through the last couple of weeks for the Oklahoma Sooners. Of course, losing to Texas and bouncing back with a big win over South Carolina, but how much stock do we put into that win? Now you take Ole Miss, who hasn't really looked as dominant on paper as my brain wants to tell me they have been, but they're still a really good team, and I know what they're capable of. And they performed well against Georgia. We have a lot to get into tonight. Okay, we also have a brief segment that we'll have with Zack Nagy from Ole Miss on SI. So a huge thanks to him for joining me earlier today. It is pre-recorded, but we'll play that here on the show live tonight. Jump in the live chat, hit that like button first. If you're watching right now, hit that like button. If you're watching anywhere other than YouTube, jump over to the YouTube live stream and hit that like button. Real quick for us. It helps us out more than you know. And then, of course, comment down below, hit that like button, hit the subscribe button. And if you want to support the channel a little bit further, you can become a member today by scanning the QR code there on the bottom right-hand side of your screen or clicking the link down in the description below. You can also just click join right next to our title there on our channel. You should be able to click join. So if you're subscribed, consider becoming a member today for as low as $2.99 a month. Just a little bit. That's all we ask for if you want to support the channel, just because it helps us keep on doing the things that we're doing here and then some. We have live shows from Sunday at 1 p.m. Central Standard Time, Sooner Sundays. And then we have the Sooner Smiths on Mondays at 7 p.m. Central Standard Time, Tuesdays right here with myself, Oklahoma Sooners Live, and also Thursdays right here where we're at right now, 7 p.m. Central Standard Time. And then, of course, live on Saturdays right after the game, post-game reactions, just quick reactions from the games. So, guys, hit that subscribe button, hit the notification bell so you know when we're going live and when we've got all these shows. Otherwise, just put it down in your calendar, do something. Of course, becoming a member just helps us keeping on, and keeps the lights on, helps us out a ton. And then, of course, we also have a merch shop where you can find stuff. This is not the shirt that you'll find on the merch shop, but it's very similar. You can find this exact design on the merch shop. It's just that this design is on the back, and then we have the VOCFB logo on the front. So it's a design that I made myself, and then being able to put it on a shirt. So go check it out. We've got a bunch of stuff to get into tonight. So without a further ado, let's get into it. The Oklahoma Sooners are going to be having a very tough matchup. And like I said, it was a really hard one for me to zone down into this game because I feel like I know Oklahoma very well because we've been covering Oklahoma and we've been obviously keeping in close contact with Oklahoma and seeing what's been going on there. I haven't been as close with the number 8 Ole Miss Rebels. And this game first opening up as a 3.5-point favorite, now jumping up to 5.5-point favorites for Oklahoma. It was just really shocking at first until diving into the numbers. And I feel like Oklahoma should win this game. But Ole Miss is a better team than what I think some of the numbers lead you on to believe, which this is going to be a huge test, possibly the biggest test for Oklahoma all season long. I know Texas beat Oklahoma, but I still think that this Ole Miss matchup going into it, without hindsight, is the toughest matchup for them so far this season. Now, I've been saying all season long that I feel confident in saying that, and I still do to some extent, but I have been saying all season long that I feel confident that this defense can hold any offense to less than 20 points. And I do feel confident in this Ole Miss team that this defense can hold them to less than 20 points and that this offense can score at least that 20 to 24 points on anyone when needed. I know it didn't happen against Texas. I know that there was one of those special teams. I think the defense has done their part, but this Ole Miss team is one that makes me scratch my head and wonder, could this be the offense to put 20 points up on this Oklahoma defense? And there's a lot that we can get into there. Anyways, it's a very, very confusing matchup to try to break down. And it's ultimately going to come down to the Oklahoma defense against the Ole Miss offense. That is the obvious one that I'm just going to throw out there, and we'll talk on it quite a bit throughout the episode tonight. But it's going to be very fun to see this matchup. It's going to be an 11 a.m. kickoff, 11 a.m. Central Standard Time. That's noon Eastern Time. It's in Oklahoma. The weather may be a little shaky, so we'll see what the weather ends up giving us here on Saturday. It's the beginning of towards the beginning of a brutal stretch for Oklahoma, and we will talk about that as well because there's plenty of top 20 teams left on Oklahoma's schedule. And really, when we look at this matchup too, another part that makes it kind of tough to pick, for me anyways, is that you've got two teams that are coming off of complete contrasting performances where Oklahoma dominated South Carolina in every way possible, 26-7. I know the score doesn't indicate, oh, wow, domination, but for those of you who understand how Oklahoma is trying to operate this season, that's what they want. They want those mid-20s on offense so that the defense can do their job and go forward from there. Where Ole Miss fell to Georgia 43-35, much higher scoring game, and Ole Miss led up to the fourth quarter. I mean, they felt like they were owning that game. I wouldn't say dominating, but owning that game up to the fourth quarter. They scored a touchdown on their first 5 drives. They just had an incredible performance in Athens with an unlikely starter at quarterback, at least from the beginning of the season. You wouldn't have expected Trinidad Chambliss to become the starter that he is for Ole Miss, but very, very interesting. Like I said, Oklahoma favored by 5.5 points now. Point total set around 51.5. I've seen some up to 53.5. Regardless, man, I don't know. I think hit the under. Oklahoma has been dominating the under all season long, and I'll look into that too here in just a moment. But Oklahoma has been hitting the under a lot. A big one, I think a lot of people are just picking Oklahoma at home, although it seems that the big bettors are putting it on Ole Miss, so the money is on Ole Miss. The last time I looked at this anyways, the money is on Ole Miss, but the amount of people picking are going for Oklahoma. So the populace is picking Oklahoma. The money is saying Ole Miss. That's the last time I checked on it. It's been a few days since I checked on it, so it might have moved completely. But I want to know, what do you guys think? Throw the predictions down in the chat. We will get to live chat here in just a moment to get your live predictions on air. But again, like I said, this is going to be a very interesting matchup. All super chats and donations will be read live on the show. That's the easiest way for us to see your guys' chats. So if you will, just donate. And it helps support the channel here. It doesn't go directly into my pocket. It goes towards producing back to this podcast so we can keep on doing more that we try to offer to you guys. But before we get too far into this matchup, like I said, guys, we have a lot that I want to get into, but I am first going to let you guys watch a quick, I suppose, interview with Zack Nagy with Ole Miss on SI. He was able to join me earlier today, actually. I figured it was just easier to try to plan a time when both of us could hop on and get that pre-recorded. So I'll let you guys check that out right now. All right, Oklahoma fans, big time matchup with the Oklahoma Sooners this weekend against Ole Miss. Ole Miss coming to Norman. It's going to be a top 15 matchup, and it's one of those games that both teams really feel like they need, and especially when we talk about the 12-team playoff and the college football playoff coming up, and it's getting closer towards the end of the season. We're getting closer to November. I've got Zack Nagy here with me to join me. Zack, thank you so much for joining.
Yeah, man, of course. I'm looking forward to this weekend. It's a college football playoff type of environment that we're expecting this weekend. It's pretty much a must-win for both programs to keep those hopes alive. So looking forward to it and looking forward to talk some ball.
Yeah, and are my notes correct here? Is this Ole Miss's first time coming to Norman?
I believe that is the case.
Yeah, that's pretty crazy. It's really insane when you think of kind of bigger programs. I think Ole Miss is a pretty historical program with everything that's gone through Ole Miss, and Oklahoma obviously being the blue blood that they are. There's so many different matchups here in the SEC that it's the first time Oklahoma went to Auburn. I think the first time Auburn came to Oklahoma, and now you got the same thing with. I think last year was the first time Oklahoma went to Oxford, and now the first time Ole Miss coming to Norman. It's just been really fun to kind of see all these new matchups, and I'm sure the rest of Oklahoma, Sooner fans feel the same way. That it's been really fun joining the SEC, and I've heard a lot from the SEC fans that it's been fun to kind of have Oklahoma and Texas both coming into the conference, kind of adding new rivalries. Now Ole Miss is going to be a new quote unquote rival with Oklahoma. So first thoughts on that with Ole Miss and Oklahoma getting matched up together.
Yeah, I mean, welcome to the new expanded Southeastern Conference, man. It's exciting to see all these new rivalries kind of coming about, or I guess newfound rivalries, however you want to call it. But yeah, I'm excited to see it. I'm a big fan of Brent Venables and what that program's building over there. I know Lane Kiffin had his little side comments about the annual rivalry and whatnot, and how he didn't quite understand it. But nonetheless, here we are. I think it sets the stage for a really good one for the next couple of years. Obviously, the SEC is going to go back and kind of reevaluate these rivalries that they made up for the next couple of years. They'll reevaluate in the next couple of years. So I'm excited for it. I think it's going to be a good one. Like you said, this is the first time Ole Miss is hitting the road and going to Oklahoma. So it sets the stage for a good one. And what more could you ask for? I mean, top 15 matchup, college football playoff implications on the line. I'm expecting a really good one.
Yeah, and to be honest, I came out right away when Lane Kiffin made that statement and was like, I understand where he's coming from. This is just a weird. Ole Miss wasn't really on the list of teams that Oklahoma was expecting. I think it was like LSU, Florida, A&M. There was a bunch of teams, but Ole Miss really wasn't on that list of teams that Oklahoma would have expected. But this is a big time matchup, like we mentioned, kind of playoff implications on the line in some regard. And I think to that point, it's playoff implications in the sense that if you go into this thing and you end up, if you come out of this game losing, you've got 2 losses. 3 losses, anybody has a shot, but as Ole Miss knows, as Alabama and South Carolina knows, that 3 losses does not guarantee you anything, no matter how good your schedule is. For Oklahoma, even with the tough schedule that they've got, 3 losses doesn't guarantee you the college football playoffs. So with 2 losses, it puts your back up against the wall at the very least. And so, kind of coming into this game, how big is this game from an Ole Miss perspective, especially going against Oklahoma, your first time coming to Norman, and then with those playoff implications on the line?
Yeah, it's about as big as it gets. And Lane Kiffin has stressed the importance of this one, just knowing that you're coming off of that loss in Athens last week, which was pretty much a heartbreaker for that team, man. You're up 9 going into the fourth quarter. You give up 17 points in the fourth, get outscored 17-0, and you really dropped the ball there. So for this one, it's a do or die type of matchup for this program. And I like how you alluded to the fact that you can win 9, you can go 9-3 and potentially make it, but Ole Miss and other programs have seen that you might not come out on the right end of that. So you got to go out there and you got to treat this one as a must-win opportunity. Lane Kiffin and his staff have done that all week. Preparation is obviously key when you're going up against a quarterback of John Mateer's caliber. This is a guy who still kind of shaken back from that injury, sure. But nonetheless, this is a guy who was at the top of that Heisman Trophy race and one that defenses don't take lightly, and Ole Miss included. So, again, I ended the last statement with the same thing. It sets the stage for a really, really big one here. And Ole Miss is really entering this one with a college football playoff or bust type of mentality.
Yeah, I think every team really wants to control their own destiny, and that's the goal throughout your season.
Yeah.
2 losses, you can still control your own destiny, but once you get to 3, you don't control it anymore. It takes a lot of other, maybe chaos to happen where there's plenty of other 9-3 teams that you are now compared against, or that the committee sees you're 9-3 and recognizes that, hey, they're 9-3, but they went against, look at this brutal schedule. And that's not what you want. That's not controlling your own destiny. But let's talk about this Lane Kiffin group, and specifically over on the offensive side, and just look, because I think everybody looks at this as Ole Miss is going to have to beat Oklahoma through their offense, and Oklahoma is going to have to beat Ole Miss through their defense, which is the perfect kind of matchup, really, for any kind of fun game. And I think that's what makes this one so so interesting and so fascinating, so fun to watch, or what I believe will be fun to watch, because you got Ole Miss, who's averaging 37 points per game, or over 37 points per game, nearly 500 yards per game, just a top 10 nationally type of offense overall. What kind of makes this offense click so much, especially with the backup quarterback now as your new starter?
Yeah, I think it's just the ability to have Kawan Lacey in your back pocket. I think this is one of the top running backs in the SEC. He's sensational with the ball in his hands, and his numbers might not reflect that all the time, but he's a guy that's a super reliable piece. And when you have a quarterback who doesn't necessarily have SEC experience, at least coming into the year, it's nice to have a guy to fall back on. And we've really seen that with Lacey over these last couple of weeks since Trinidad Chambliss has taken over as that starting quarterback for this team. And make no mistake about it, he certainly went into the year as the backup quarterback, but this is a starting caliber guy, and he's proven that over these last couple of weeks. From his first start against Arkansas, getting into the game late against Kentucky, his numbers jump off the page, and he's certainly been a guy that's really exceeded expectations. I mean, the story in Oxford has been really fun to watch with, the little Trinidad flags on the doorsteps and stuff and all these different things. I mean, Trinidad Chambliss is the truth. I'm a big fan of what he's provided this team so far, and lucky for him, he has Lane Kiffin in his back pocket to sit there and do the play calls for him, man. This is an offensive mastermind in Kiffin, and we know that from years past. So nonetheless, man, you utilize the weapons that you have in Deuce Alexander on the outside, Caden Lee, Dejon Stribling, etc. You're in a good spot. I like the receivers. I like the skill position guys that they have here going into this one. But Daquan Wright is going to be a player that I'm keeping tabs on. The way that they utilize the tight end position has been one that's given them a tremendous advantage over the last couple of weeks. He's listed as questionable in the availability report. I'd be surprised to not see him play this week. So you continue to utilize Trinidad and the weapons that he has on the outside, have that balanced attack with Kawan Lacey, and it puts you in a really good spot. It's going to be a challenge, of course. Brent Venables is a defensive-minded coach, and he's shown that in years past. But nonetheless, Ole Miss has some firepower on offense. It's going to be a good one. It's kind of strength against strength, which, like you said before, it sets the tone for a good one.
We saw Ole Miss against Georgia, and anybody who walks away from that game not really impressed with really either team must really not be focusing on everything that went into that game, because
Right.
It was an offensive game back and forth there really early in the game, where Ole Miss, I believe, scored touchdowns on their first five possessions before kind of going quiet late in the game. Was that a bit, because I think if you go back to last season and the last game that Oklahoma and Ole Miss played against each other, Oklahoma found out that Lane Kiffin is really good about being able to adjust, and seeing what the defense gave him last year. Right. He was able to adjust and say, hey, I see some weaknesses that we can attack. Second half came out and did just that. Of course, on defense, I think they did a very similar job. But in that game against Georgia, it really felt like there was a lot of adjustments made by Kirby Smart, and obviously one of the greats and one of the best at doing that as well. Do you think it was more of the adjustments from Kirby Smart's Georgia team, or do you think it was just Ole Miss losing their rhythm and not being able to find it there in the fourth quarter?
I think you have to give credit to Kirby. I mean, this is one of the best in the business, and he has been for quite some time. So you got to give him some credit there. Yes, they scored on their first 5 possessions, and were pretty much nearly flawless. I mean, Trinidad Chambliss went to a electric environment and really lived up to the billing over there. So you got to give him credit for that hot start, but you got to give credit on the other side of the ball too, and what Kirby Smart did from an adjustments perspective. And that's where it's going to be really fun this weekend against Oklahoma. Brent Venables can really go out there and change things up in the second half and give Trinidad different looks. I mean, this is a guy who has only played less than a handful of SEC games, and now you're going on the road once again to Norman. So it's going to be difficult for him, but nonetheless, I think the adjustments that defenses have made over the last couple of weeks have given them some issues, even dating back to LSU in week 5. They came out and they were dominant really in the first half. But then you look at the second half and Ole Miss only scored 7 points. So for me, it's really going to be fun to watch the second half transpire and see the adjustments that Brent Venables makes. But Lane Kiffin's going to be prepared for that. And he's seen his team kind of struggle in the third and fourth quarters down the last couple of weeks. Now it's time to kind of turn things up a notch and stay consistent through 4 quarters.
And do you think that Ole Miss fans are a little concerned about this Ole Miss offense going against this Oklahoma defense? Because it's been an offense that has just been explosive. And then now you go over to Oklahoma and you go to Norman at 11 a.m. kickoff, which Gabe Eichert kind of mentioned, on I believe it was on X, on social media, that, hey, Oklahoma's pretty used to these things, being in the Big 12. They're used to these 11 a.m. kickoffs. But then going against this defense, who really has been elite and one of the top defenses, if not the top defense in the nation, do you think Ole Miss fans and the program there is a little concerned about this defense and how well their offense can perform against a defense this tough?
If they're not, they should be, because certainly, like you said, it's one of, if not the top defenses in the SEC or all of America. I mean, they're dominant, and Brent Venables is a phenomenal coach, and Lane Kiffin has talked about that, how defensive-minded he is and how he gets the most out of his players. So if they're not nervous or not worried, they should be. Because certainly it's going to be a daunting task coming up ahead. And I like that you threw out there that 11 a.m. kickoff piece. In the SEC, you might get one or two of those every single year. On the other side, Oklahoma's used to it in years past. So they have a slight advantage in that regard, paired with being at home, paired with a strong defense. It gives the Sooners a really good chance in this one. And there's a reason why Vegas is kind of giving them the edge in this one. So nonetheless, if they're not worried, they should be. I think LSU. I think Ole Miss is a fire-powered offense. But it's going to be a daunting task against this Oklahoma D.
Yeah, I think Vegas giving Oklahoma the edge was really shocking, even to a lot of Oklahoma fans at first. But the more that I've kind of dove down through a lot of the stats and trying to look and compare these teams, a big part of that comes down to being at home. And then also just, again, the matchup there, the offense of Ole Miss against Oklahoma's defense. And you've really got a lot of question marks that are going to be answered this weekend. And I think that is what makes it so exciting. But let's jump over and talk a little bit about Trinidad Chambliss, a little bit more anyways, because it truly is a spectacular story that we've seen from this. Austin Simmons goes down hurt and everybody said, Ole Miss is done. Ole Miss, they're out. They got to go and turn over to a D2 quarterback who nobody even knows who he is. And as amazing as the name is, we don't know who this guy is. And then he steps onto the field, comes from D2 national champion, which a lot of people overlook or may not even know. He is a national champion, and now turning into becoming one of the best QBs in the country. Has he basically stolen the starting position at this point?
I would say so. I think you see a lot of national analysts come out and say Trinidad starting this week. Trinidad starting this week every single, let's say Wednesday or Thursday, whatever it is. But this is a guy who's taken over this starting job, and I can't envision them turning back anytime soon, barring anything drastic happening over the next couple of weeks. I mean, the story is there. The story's been fantastic. This is a Division II All-American, a Division II national champion who came in uncertain if he'd get any playing time. I mean, this was Austin Simmons' job. They're paying him handsomely. They paid him like the starting quarterback that he's supposed to be. He stuck around, and nonetheless, this was his team and his job. And then he gets banged up with that ankle injury, and the rest is history. I mean, Trinidad Chambliss has been a guy who unlocks different elements to this offense. But for me, man, the most important piece to it is the way that he takes care of the football. I mean, I think he's only thrown one interception this year. So for me, just the way that he can take care of the football is an element that Austin Simmons wasn't providing them over the first couple of weeks. You look at week 1 and week 2, and he threw a pair of interceptions in the first half in both games. He was a little bit sporadic. And then you bring in a veteran. He's not a veteran in the SEC. He's not a veteran in Division I football, but he's a veteran in the game. And his IQ was on full display over those first couple of starts that he had. And it's hard to turn back on that. I mean, when you're stuffing the stat sheet and allowing your other outside receivers to eat, it puts your team in a really good position, and we've seen them thrive over these weeks with it. So, yeah, yes, he's been fantastic. But Dejon Stribling, and you look at Caden Lee, and you look at these other receivers, Deuce Alexander, they've really lifted some of this weight off of his shoulders to allow them to really shine. So for me, Trinidad Chambliss is just one piece of the puzzle that's allowed this team to really be successful. Yeah,
and sitting there at 1,500 plus passing yards and a bunch of touchdowns, only throwing one pick on the season, I believe, if I'm remembering that correctly. And I think I also saw that he's like 23 years old, which is old for a college quarterback. But with that age does bring some maturity. How do you think that maturity has kind of helped him bring that over as a leader and into his leadership now? Because backup quarterbacks don't really have to be that much of a leader to your entire team. You might be the leader in some regard. And like you said, he is a veteran to some extent. And now having to step into that starting quarterback role, I think that maturity probably helps there in that leadership some, right?
Yeah, I think it pays dividends. I mean, this is a guy who started for multiple years at the Division II level, but having the ability to come in here and have that age factor on, like you said, 23 years old. I mean, having that maturity is key. And he's developed a close relationship with Lane Kiffin. And I think over these last couple of weeks, he's understood that he needs to step up a little bit both on and off the field. He's a quiet guy. He doesn't talk too much. So when he does kind of open up and talk to his teammates, they listen with open ears. So Trinidad's a player that's really become an X factor for this team. I love what he provides. He's been super talented with those explosive plays of 15-plus yards, but the ability to also break down defenses with his legs has been key, and that kind of extendability where he can open up plays and keep them alive has been super crucial. So on the field, he's been fantastic, but off the field, being a leader, like you alluded to, has really unlocked different elements for this offense, knowing that they have somebody to rely on. And I think you're starting to see the proofs in the product, right? You're looking at a team, top 10 in the country, 6-1, 3-1 in the SEC. Everything that they want is right in front of them. It obviously starts with the quarterback position, and he's really developed trust with Lane Kiffin to where he feels like he can dial up anything that he wants, and there's no limitations like a lot of teams might have with a backup quarterback.
Yeah, and I think it's a truly a really fun story with Trinidad, and I think he did enough. If you really look at what happened in that Georgia game, I think he did enough to win that game. But the biggest concern for Ole Miss, which seems to be the obvious one, is that defense. How does Ole Miss and the fan base, how do they see this defense moving forward? Because it is a nationally talked about team. It's a team that a lot of people believe could be good enough to make it to the playoffs and contend for a national championship. Is there still some sort of confidence or hope in this defense that it'll keep on improving as the season goes on?
I think when you have a coordinator of Pete Golding's caliber on the defensive side of the ball, there's always going to be a sense of hope. I mean, this is a guy who's fantastic at his job. Just from a personnel perspective, it might not be what you were hoping it would be at this point. I mean, you went out and you revamped, or tried to revamp rather, that entire secondary. I mean, not a single returning starter came back from last year. So it was always going to take a little bit of time. But now you're sitting here looking at week 9 and you're giving up a ton of points. We saw against Arkansas that kind of be an outlier game, but now you're stacking more games on here. You give up 17 in the fourth quarter to Georgia, and you're not necessarily seeing the evolution that you would have liked to have seen from the defense to this point. For me, man, it starts with the secondary. I haven't been that impressed with what Sage Ryan has provided at the safety position back there. It's been a struggle. And now you go on the road to Norman. You play against John Mateer. I mean, this is a guy who's electric, and his ability to extend plays too, man. I sit here and talk about Trinidad Chambliss and what he can do with his legs and the ability to throw on the run and contort his body. But now you're going up against a quarterback on the other side who can do the exact same thing. So I think it's going to be a tremendous challenge for this defense. But to get back to the question, I think there's always a certain level of hope and kind of an ease of mind knowing that you have Pete Golding there. But can his scheme be strong enough to help with the limitations that you have from a personnel perspective? That's to be seen.
So in this matchup, like we've mentioned, it seems irresistible force of an offense against an immovable object in Oklahoma's defense. That's the big one there. What do you think, kind of breaking that matchup alone down, what do you think is the key matchup, or maybe the one that decides this game in your mind?
Yeah, I think it's going to be how they spy Trinidad Chambliss. And I hate for us to sound like a broken record here because we've sat here and talked about him so much, but this is a guy that you have to keep a spy on at all times. So the second level of defense is where my eyes are going to be for the most part, to see how they keep Trinidad in the pocket. And sure, if you keep him in the pocket, he can be successful. But again, you want to limit him and contain him and not allow him to break open these big-time plays. So the matchup that I'm going to be keeping tabs on is how that second level of defense can keep him in the pocket and not allow him to roll out and extend those big-time plays. So Trinidad's a guy who, he went on the road to Athens and performed extremely well. But now you go up against a defense that is even more of a challenge, in my opinion. I think the analytics would back that. On the road, 11 a.m. kickoff. There's a lot of different outside factors here that might not favor him or this Ole Miss program going into it. And again, there's a reason why Vegas is kind of favoring Oklahoma in this one for a reason. So that's the matchup that I'm looking at. It's going to be intriguing to see how Lane Kiffin can kind of scheme out of it and allow his quarterback to be successful. Do
you think that some of the film from last week for Oklahoma being able to slow down a guy that's very similar to Trinidad Chambliss in some regard, that they're both very mobile. I think mobile in different ways. But do you think that that film helps Ole Miss a little bit, maybe be able to scheme some ways to get Trinidad Chambliss out in space and use his legs when needed?
Certainly. I think that's what they're going to be looking to do in this one. I mean, his ability to extend plays is so significant. You have to play to your strengths, especially going up against such a talented team. I mean, we know what Brent Venables can do here. I mean, there's a reason why analytically they're so strong. So when it looks to Lane Kiffin's his play calling and what he's trying to do with Trinidad, of course, man, you want to play to your strengths, and you've seen enough film on Trinidad to know what his strengths are at this point. Now it's just continuing to keep it simple. I know everybody likes to say the saying, "Kiss what? Keep it simple, stupid." So you keep it simple and you utilize Trinidad to the best of his abilities, and then you fall back on Kawan Lacey a little bit. And you're going to be in a pretty good spot here.
And I think what Lane Kiffin does with Trinidad Chambliss, or really any of his quarterbacks that you've seen in the past, is that he does adapt really well to who's at quarterback. And I think that's something that South Carolina is still trying to figure out. How do you adapt to allow Lenora Sellers to use the most gifted talent that he has, and they don't do a great job of that, where I think Ole Miss will be better at that because I have more faith in what Lane Kiffin does there on his offense. But Zach, let's bring it home. Let's get predictions. What's your prediction for this game? Who ends up winning and why?
It's tough for me just because the defense for Oklahoma is so strong. I loved how you said they're an immovable object. I mean, they're super talented. And then you factor in being at home for the Sooners, 11 a.m. kickoff. There's so many things that favor them. And I know we've talked about that kind of endlessly here, and I can't sound contradictory. I have to stick to what I was saying before. And for me, it makes it a tough task for Ole Miss. So I have to give Oklahoma the edge in this one by a slight margin of about 27-24, 27-21. I do think that Oklahoma is going to get this one done here, unfortunately, for the Rebels. But look, you have two losses here. If you can run the table for Ole Miss, you can put yourself in a good position, but your back is certainly going to be against the wall. I think John Mateer is an extremely talented quarterback. I think their offense has sneaky weapons, and I think it could give this Ole Miss defense some trouble too. So for me, this Thursday prediction, I'm going to have to lean towards Oklahoma. Maybe over the next 48 hours, I sit back and read a couple different things and kind of dive into the film a little bit more, and maybe my opinion sways in a different direction. But certainly right now, I would certainly have to sit back and give Oklahoma the edge in this one.
It has been certainly that way for me, where it's really hard because I respect Ole Miss a ton, and I would have originally picked Ole Miss to win, without even looking at it. But then the more you do dive down into it, and like you said, this defense is just the one that I think Oklahoma fans have a ton of confidence in, and never have lost confidence in that defense. And so certainly will be the tale of the tape. No doubt. It's going to be, how good is this defense against one of the best offenses? I think one of the trickiest offenses in the nation for sure. But Zach, let my listeners know real quick where they can find all your great work.
Absolutely, man. For me on my personal page, it's at ZNagy20. Always putting out some content on X or Twitter, whichever one you'd like to call it. And then at Ole Miss on SI. That's where we're rolling out a ton of content, some pregame coverage, recruiting updates, whatever you need related to the Ole Miss Rebels. We've got it on the site. So make sure to check it out. Expecting a really good one this weekend in Norman. Excited to see how it shakes out. So nonetheless, stage is set, man. Top 15 matchup in Norman, 11 a.m. kickoff. Excited to see what transpires.
It's going to be a fun one, but everyone, Zack Nagy, of course, like we mentioned a moment ago, no relation to Jim, just the same last name, right? But no, I appreciate you so much for jumping on and kind of give us a little bit more insight there on the Ole Miss Rebels.
Absolutely, man. I appreciate you.
All right. Hopefully everybody enjoyed that, and also watching that back too. I'm not very specifically proud of a lot of what I do. I think I do an okay job. That's why I keep on showing up in front of a camera. But it was kind of on the spot coming up with the immovable object. I forget how I put that now, but I need to go back and look at that, because that was a really well put there. Anyways, hopefully you guys enjoyed that. Zack Nagy joined me, Ole Miss on SI. So go check out some of his work that he's done this week. He's done a lot, of course, for Oklahoma fans specifically. If you're an Ole Miss fan, go check it out and follow his work consistently. And then, of course, find him on social media as well. I think that was ZNagy20. But great at covering there. And then he also covers for LSU. So we may be talking to him again here very soon for the Sooners. But let's get into more because there's a ton more that we can get into. First, I will jump into the chat real quick. If you want to verify or if you want to confirm that your comment is read live on the show, leave a super chat donation, and it just makes it so much easier to find it. It will pop out and stand out like a sore thumb. On top of that, it helps support the show a lot. So we appreciate everybody so much for the love and support. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Stacy says, how do we think the weather might impact the game? If it is in fact as rainy as it's expecting, I think this benefits Oklahoma because, for one, it takes away some of the passing threat that Ole Miss has, which I think is their biggest threat. But Oklahoma's defense is going to stop their run. They're at least going to slow them down and not allow them to score very much at all if you have to rely on the run game. So I like that. And Jesse agrees with me. Jesse Browning, what's up? He says, I think that the heavy rains favor us. And that's just the cold, hard truth. And Oklahoma found some sort of running game there against South Carolina, which was very crucial. I do see some predictions. We will get to those. And I do see, Stacy says, from the availability report from George Storia. And I'm looking at the availability report right now too. So Gentry Williams, questionable. I earlier this week, it seemed like, hey, he's fine. He's just a little sore, and his shoulder, it's the opposite shoulder as well. So it's not the same shoulder that was bothering him as well, or earlier on in his career, I think last season, and even bleeding into this season. But it's now the other shoulder, which I don't think is a good thing. It's not, but hopefully that's okay. Keontae Lewis still out. That is the big one for me. And then Logan Howland, probable. That is a good thing. Doubtful. Derek Simmons is doubtful. But I'm overall, I'm not too concerned with the availability report just because of the depth that Oklahoma has this season compared to seasons past. So anyways, that is some to bring up there. I appreciate you doing that because then it forced me to go and double check that availability report and see if anything changed there, Stacy. Okay, seeing some predictions here. Let me make sure to mark those for us. I don't have a producer behind the screens to make sure that we get all these read. So I want to mark your guys' predictions. Put your predictions in the chat, and I will get to all of those predictions here just a little bit. But for now, we'll put those aside, and we will go ahead and jump down. Oklahoma's offense. There's a lot. Can they exploit this Ole Miss defense in ways that should be fairly obvious? I think there are certain ways that you can hurt Ole Miss. And again, I think the weather is going to play into it some. It's going to affect how much either team throws the ball. And if it's heavy rains, you can guarantee there will be running. Both teams will be running the ball. Now, how does Oklahoma's offense do with that? That's what we'll get into quite a bit. But first, starting off with the main thing that you get to on offense, when you're talking about an offense, can they succeed? Will they succeed? You talk about the most important position on offense, and that is the quarterback. John Mateer, pretty much 100%, as 100% as one can get now. So the injury, not really anything to talk about there anymore. So let's look forward from that. He really didn't have a ton of a ton of rushing yards here in the last two games for Oklahoma on this offense, which some might look at and say, oh no, that's not good. Why is Oklahoma not able to run the ball with John Mateer? Why is John Mateer not able to run the ball? The first several games when Oklahoma was 5-0, it was because John Mateer was running the ball, at least the first four games. And against Texas, I think there was an obvious reason why he wasn't running the ball. You don't want to re-injure that thumb that was freshly healing. And on the other side, now you go on to South Carolina, it wasn't a concerning thing because the running backs were running the ball, and we'll get to that in just a second. So you look at John Mateer sitting around 65% on the completion percentage on the season, over 1,500 yards, 7 touchdowns, 6 interceptions. That's the part that we do not like at all. But no turnovers last week against South Carolina, and looks very efficient against South Carolina. Very, very particular with where he was going with the ball and making his reads really quick, which is what you need going forward, especially into SEC play with all these top 25 teams. He does have 209 rushing yards and 5 touchdowns there, so 12 touchdowns overall on the season from John Mateer. And really, I'm not too upset with any of those stats other than the interceptions. Can't throw another interception for the rest of the season. That's how I feel. You don't want to get into the double digits on interceptions or turnovers in general. That's not typically a good sign for success. But John Mateer, I think he'll be just fine. I think he's making better decisions. I think he seems a lot clearer headed in that South Carolina game. And really not affecting him, the thumb injury, not affecting him too much. I think he'll do just fine, putting up some really good stats so far in the season overall, again, outside of the turnovers. And so we got to be pretty happy about what we get in John Mateer as Oklahoma fans. Now, the running game, it awakened. It was completely awakened. It feels like it has been revived and brought back from the dead and resurrected, some may say, because it was completely stagnant, to say the least. It was atrocious. And it wasn't because Oklahoma doesn't have running backs. It's not because of really anything other than the offensive line not performing to their standard and not knowing what running back to go with. And I think a lot of fans kind of figured that out pretty quick this season. But it seems like Oklahoma finally found their two backs, their two key running backs in the backfield, and it has to be Torrey Blaylock and Xavier Robinson. There is no other running back. When it comes to putting them on the field, those are your running backs. That's what you're getting from the Sooners. Now, will the coaching staff kind of go through with that and keep on going? I do not know, but we will find out here in this game, and I think it's going to be crucial, again, because if that weather is the way that it's forecasted, the running game needs to stay awakened and stay revived the way that it was against South Carolina. You got true freshman Torrey Blaylock breaking out and leading the team with close to 400 rushing yards, 391 rushing yards on the season so far, averaging 4.5 yards per carry, which is phenomenal at this point, especially for a true freshman. Everyone has fallen in love and become such huge fans of Torrey Blaylock, even those who aren't even Oklahoma fans. Love what they're seeing from the true freshman. So shout out to Torrey Blaylock. He absolutely deserves it. He had 100-yard game now against, it was earlier on, let's see, that was against Temple. I didn't put that in my notes. Had a 100-yard game against Temple, now a 101-yard game against South Carolina, and a big touchdown there for him too. He had that opening drive was Torrey Blaylock. Without Torrey Blaylock, that opening drive doesn't kickstart this offense and get them rolling the way that they did against South Carolina. So an 18-yard rush to set up now, I believe that was third and short, like 3rd and 2, rather than 3rd and long, because it was a 2nd and 20. 18-yard rush, then put them to 3rd and 2, if I'm remembering the downs properly. And then an 18-yard rush again at the end of the drive, rushing for 50 yards total on that opening drive to score a touchdown. Torrey Blaylock scoring a touchdown. So really needed him. And of course, Xavier Robinson kind of complimenting him with 58 yards and a touchdown against the Gamecocks as well. So offensive line, it definitely found some sort of rhythm against South Carolina after struggling against Texas and really struggling as a whole just throughout the season in run blocking. It seemed like Oklahoma's really only way that Oklahoma was going to be able to run the ball was by getting an extra blocker in their running back and running with John Mateer. That's kind of been out of the question now, and you start to running your running backs, get them into a rhythm, keep them into a rhythm, and you get this from them. And so that was a huge game, absolutely necessary for Oklahoma, and especially as we get down the stretch with some of these tough games here up on the schedule. Now going to the receiving weapons that Oklahoma has, of course, Isaiah Satania kind of emerging as the go-to target for John Mateer in this offense. 493 receiving yards, I believe top 10, at least top 5 in the SEC. I think he's top 10 nationally, and I don't quote me on that, but I feel like I saw that somewhere this week. Didn't put that down, of course. Anyways, he's got 4 touchdowns now on the season and has really had kind of a breakout last 3 games or so. And, he's had some dropped passes. I think that's the big one for Isaiah Satania. Can he keep his hands on the ball, keep the ball in his hands, and not drop as many? I think I've seen quite a few of those in the last few weeks. So that would be big. He did have 7 catches for 73 yards and a touchdown against South Carolina. Deion Burks is the other obvious weapon there. And I think, Keontae Lewis, he shows to be doubtful on the availability report, but you do have Giovanni Gibson back in there. Can we see Giovanni Gibson being used in a way that shows that he's now a key target? Because I think he is one of those guys that absolutely can be a key target for Oklahoma if he's used properly. So got to see Giovanni Gibson being used a little bit more. Deion Burks and Keontae Lewis have both been kind of the main guys for Oklahoma. I guess it seems like for the majority of this season so far, Keontae Lewis unavailable last week and most likely unavailable this week. But now Isaiah Satania kind of stepping up into that role, and Giovanni Gibson making his way back from injury has really looked phenomenal when he's used. How much more can he be used? And of course, you've got tight end Jaren Kanak, who has been a reliable target and I think needs to be used more because he just hasn't been used really in the last 3 games at least, for sure against Kent State. And I don't even know if he was used against Auburn, so maybe 4 games. But Kent State, Texas, and South Carolina, he really was not used much at all. So Jaren Kanak needs to be one of those key, reliable guys to fall back on, and he's shown that he's capable of being that. So I would really like to see Oklahoma being able to use him quite a bit more here against Ole Miss, where it could be a big mismatch there by using him. Some concern on the offensive line as far as depth, but I'm not too concerned about it. I think that this offensive line has really improved a lot, and especially when you see what they did against South Carolina, you're starting to see a lot. I think Derek Simmons will probably be out. You do have Jake Taylor out, Troy Everett out for the season with his knee injury. Jacob Sexton, I think he was also listed out. Am I correct on that? Jacob Sexton, yes, he's also out. So there is some concern with the availability there and the depth on the offensive line because of all of those. But of course, with Howland, if he can go, and Howland was the one that we were talking about, right? Yeah, Logan Howland was the one on the availability report. Seems like he might be able to go. And then, of course, Luke Buklenko stepping into his role, seeing what Michael Fasusi has done on and on. Eddie Pierre-Louis coming in, I feel like he has shown a lot of improvement this season as we get closer and as we kind of progress through the season. It's an offensive line that has faced a lot of tough go-arounds, but it seems like things are going right for them. And against South Carolina, this offensive line really couldn't have performed too much better than what you saw. And if they could perform that way, again, that same caliber of performance against the rest of the schedule, I think they'll be just fine. So the keys for this Oklahoma offense, I think, Mateer kind of keeping some sort of dual threat capability, especially with the weather the way that it is. If we can kind of get him to kind of trick this Ole Miss defense and be able to use his legs again, I think that would be very key for Oklahoma, specifically because of the weather. Now, if the weather doesn't turn out to be rainy and just a total mess on the field and wet balls are not meant to be thrown in games like this. So if it is dry, then sure, we want to see him pass the ball really well. Mainly for Oklahoma, continuing the ground game success with Torrey Blaylock and Xavier Robinson, getting them consistent reps to get them consistent in their run game. I think that is extremely crucial for Oklahoma, not just in this game, but we've talked about it ad nauseum throughout the rest of this season. And then, of course, protecting John Mateer all goes down to the offensive line. Can you protect him and also run block? Because run blocking has been the biggest concern and the biggest question mark. Can Oklahoma sustain what they did against South Carolina? Need to see some of that run blocking again. And you need to win early downs here for Oklahoma. You need to get ahead of the chains and win those early downs here against Ole Miss. This is a high-scoring offense. So as an offense, you have to be prepared to help your defense out. And we'll get to plenty more of that here in just a moment. But Oklahoma, this offense, main thing that we take away from this offense is that they are going to need to be able to run the ball effectively and efficiently here for Oklahoma against Ole Miss this week. All right, let's look over at the other side and look at Ole Miss's offense. Ole Miss offense, How do they adjust to this Oklahoma defense? Because that's really what's going to stand out. That's the matchup. We talked about it already plenty throughout this episode so far, but this offense is a very strong, high-powered offense here that Ole Miss brings out. Starting off with Trinidad Chambliss, the portal quarterback, the D2 national championship quarterback, coming into Ole Miss as a backup and getting in and doing his time. I mean, he's sitting here at over 1,500 yards, passing yards on the season, only threw one interception. He's at 155.7 QB rating right now. And he's also a dual threat quarterback with 70 rushes for 323 yards and 5 touchdowns. He hasn't played every game this year, guys. And so I believe he missed at least a game and a half, with Austin Simmons being the original starter for the season. He might have missed 2.5 games, something like that. Anyways, he's been incredible. Not quite as efficient with 62.7% completion percentage, so not quite as efficient as John Mateer, but efficient enough to keep them going. And I think that Georgia game really brought that number down quite a bit as well. So Trinidad Chambliss, definitely a dual threat, scary guy. And total offense, he's at 261 yards per game. He threw for 263 yards at Georgia. Of course, going 1 for 10 in that critical fourth quarter where they ended up losing and falling apart there on offense. And then, of course, the defense, kind of with their backs up against the wall, really wasn't able to stop Georgia. So it will be the best defense that Trinidad Chambliss has faced this season, but can Oklahoma slow him down? And can Ole Miss keep on adjusting to keep Trinidad Chambliss going? Their rushing attack. I know Zack Nagy mentioned this whenever I was talking to him. Kewan Lacey, the Missouri transfer, coming over 138 carries this season and leads the Ole Miss ground game. He's averaging 187 rushing yards per game, 5th in the SEC. That can't be right. Sometimes I write down these stats and I'm typing it down so quickly and compiling so much that I just look at it when I'm reading it out loud. Does not sound right at all. And I've got to fact check myself on that because it just feels so unreal. All right, Ole Miss, clicking on their stats for the season. We've got Kewan Lacey. Yeah, wow. That is just absolutely incredible. He's got 618 rushing yards on the season. That's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Anyways, Trinidad Chambliss's scrambling ability kind of adds another dimension to this run game, but Kewan Lacey being the main guy, one of the best running backs in the SEC and in the nation at that. So establishing the run is going to be really critical against OU's elite defense, but can they get it going? And when they can't get it going, can they trick Oklahoma's defense to find a way to open up that run game? I think that's going to be crucial for this Ole Miss offense. Of course, we talked about a little bit about this offense and the receivers with the Zahn Stribling and what he's been able to do. A transfer in kind of provides a little bit of veteran leadership there in that group. And then Harrison Wallace, another transfer. That's another guy to watch out for. You got a few guys, Caden Lee, Traylon Ray, both kind of speed guys out on the perimeter is where you're going to see them most. And then, of course, their tight end. I think that's really where they have the biggest matchup there, like a mismatch, is with their tight end, Daquan Wright. 6'4", 255 pounds. He's averaging over 22 yards per catch, and very consistent, and just he is that big play threat, and a big target. That's a very sure hands type of guy to go to. So Ole Miss, they're averaging about 304 passing yards per game, which is second in the SEC, which is crazy. But yeah, 304 passing yards. This feels like some Big 12 stats with some of these, like with Kewan Lacey not being in the top 3 running backs. He's 5th, and it's just insane. Absolutely insane. Anyways. So Kewan Lacey is not averaging 187.7. The Ole Miss offense is averaging 187. So I'm reading that in my notes properly now. So, anyways, going on, Lane Kiffin's kind of overall offensive philosophy. He is an offensive-minded guy. He's been averaging 37.4 points per game, 16th nationally, scoring touchdowns. Last week, scored 5 touchdowns straight on his first 5 possessions against Georgia. That's not going to happen against Oklahoma. I have fairly high confidence in saying that's the case, but he does have a high-tempo offense, which I think I was looking at that. Let me see if I can. I probably can't pull that up right now because it's not even on this computer here that we're running off of. But the average time between snaps for Ole Miss was incredibly low, and I had that as a stat earlier that we didn't get to when I was talking to Zack Nagy. But anyways, it's a very high-paced offense, and they like to keep on going. Very high tempo, kind of that spread attack that's going to kind of create a bunch of different mismatches and try to spread Oklahoma's defense out. That's what Lane Kiffin runs. And so he's got a lot of creativity where Venables just has discipline and studying film, and not just himself, but this defense. I know Lane Kiffin kind of made that, I don't know if it was a jab or a compliment, but it looks like Oklahoma knows what play is coming next. And I think he did mean that as a compliment in some regard, but it's a very fascinating chess match between this Ole Miss offense, Lane Kiffin's ability against Brent Venables and this defense, and how quick both of them are able to adjust and to adapt against one another. I think Ole Miss has some offensive line questions. I think they've kind of let up some pressure, but mainly with their run game. I think they've had some injuries. I know during fall camp, had some key players go down. So will they be? It's not that Ole Miss has been bad on the offensive line. It's just, will they be able to match up against Oklahoma's absolutely ferocious pass rush? And they've got the most tackles for a loss, most sacks in all of Power 4. This has been a phenomenal defensive line for Oklahoma, and if they play their game, watch out. I think that's what's going to own this match against this Lane Kiffin offense. All right. I'll jump over the chat real quick first, just to make sure, see what else we've got going in the chat, because I have not been paying attention over there, to be totally honest, because we just have a ton to get through. We're already pushing an hour here, guys. Anyways, let's see. Jimmy says the OT has no more depth. Yeah, the offensive tackles, they have no more depth, all injured. There isn't any depth there, but I feel confident in what Oklahoma's got. You're right, though. The depth is concerning. The depth is concerning. Any score predictions we'll save here for the end. We'll get to those here in just a moment. Thunder OU Sooner says, how will Oklahoma fare in the rain when it's supposed to be rainy Saturday? Again, I think Oklahoma does just fine. Don't fumble the ball. Keep a hold of it. Oklahoma runs the ball very well, and as long as Oklahoma runs the ball really well, as long as they run the ball, I think they'll run the ball really well. And this Ole Miss defense, they rank. Man, I forget the ranking now, and it's something that's going to bug me that I don't have in front of me. But they're in the 90s, where I believe they're 98th, 94th, 98th, something like that, in total rush defense, where South Carolina was 75th. So South Carolina was statistically a better rushing defense than Ole Miss is, and Oklahoma pretty much had their way with them there. So I feel really confident in this Oklahoma run game, and being able to run the ball, if you can successfully do it in the rain, that's a key to success in any big time matchup like this. Let's talk a little bit about the tail of the tape here and the obvious matchup. Again, we keep on talking about this, but it is Oklahoma's defense against Ole Miss's offense. Oklahoma's defense absolutely just dominant, and anyone that wants to say that this defense isn't elite, that it's not an elite defense, has not looked at the stats, has not paid attention and watched a full game of this defense. It is truly an elite defense, an amazing defense. Number 1 in the nation in total defense, just allowing 213 yards per game. Number 1 in scoring, I believe that's number 1. I have number and nothing, but number 1 in scoring defense, I believe. 9.4 points allowed per game. That's incredible. Less than double digits. Might go up this game. Just be aware. Unless Oklahoma can just shut them down completely. That'd be amazing. And then number 1 in total in sacks. Man, a lot of my notes kind of got jumbled up here, and it kind of is looking goofy. So apologies there. But they're sacking the quarterback 4 times a game right now. This defense is. You got an amazing linebacker corps, which is going to be critical for Oklahoma, as Zack Nagy brought up whenever we were talking with him. That second level is going to be very crucial. Kip Lewis leading the team in total tackles, 31 tackles. Kobe McKenzie, Sammy Omosigo. I mean, these are guys that are out there and performing at an elite level. So Oklahoma's second level, no concerns there. Don't even have to get started on the on the defensive line and what they're able to do. But the rest, looking at the pass rush, I think R. Mason Thomas, 5.5 sacks on the season, leading the team. Taylor Wine, a guy who has just been phenomenal and finally getting his spotlight where he deserves it. 3.5 sacks, also had the interception against South Carolina on that fake punt. Then you got Jaden Jackson up there with 3 sacks, Grayson Halton with the 2.5 sacks. You got David Stone in there in the mix, Dom up there. I mean, it's just, this is a truly terrorizing defensive line that is going to be looking to get back there and disrupt Chambliss all afternoon. The offensive line can't hold up against this pass rush. I believe that wholeheartedly, and I mean that in the sense that they're going to get tackles for a loss. They're probably going to get a few sacks in this game, and they are going to put a lot of pressure in the backfield. So if they're not getting the tackle for a loss, they're making some sort of chaos back there to wreak havoc back there. That's going to be huge for this Oklahoma defense to keep on doing what they've been doing all season long. The secondary, I think that's going to be extremely crucial, and the only one that Oklahoma may have slight concerns about. You've got to limit Ole Miss down to less than, what did I say, 200 plus yards pass, close to 300 yards passing, was it? We can scroll up real quick and check on that real quick. Just because, I mean, this has been an absolutely amazing offense. So they're passing for right around 260 plus yards per game. It's just, it's a scary, 304 passing yards per game. Yeah, so I mean, it's a scaring passing attack, and that's what Oklahoma needs to shut down. Now, Oklahoma has limited their opponents to around 130 yards passing per game. You got Reggie Powers out there helping out and kind of that cheetah position a lot here lately, and really stepping into that role beautifully with Gentry Williams and Eli Bowen, who's been returned from injury. You've got hopefully Gentry Williams is back in this game. Hopefully he's back in this game and performing at a high level. But that is the biggest concern. Can you slow their passing attack down to force them to run the ball where Oklahoma is going to succeed? Oklahoma is going to be able to keep them at a low rushing attack, one of the best in the nation at that. So I mean, it's a top 3 percentile performance with this with this defense, and phenomenal defense on first and third down. Second down is really where they've struggled the most, but the pressure on the offense is always on first and third. If you can force them into a third down, this is an extremely good defense at getting off the field. They've got a challenge. I think that this Ole Miss offense, it is really unlike anything that OU has faced this season, and unlike anything that they're going to face later on. I think this is the biggest test for this defense. How can they attack and get back there? Will they force Ole Miss into some obvious passing situations where the pass rush can get back there and feast in the backfield? What are they going to do against the dual threat quarterback, the dual threat ability that Chambliss brings to the table? I think containing Chambliss, keeping him in the pocket, limit the scramble yards, force him to panic in the backfield, and then win the line of scrimmage, shut down Kawan Lacey, and then forcing Ole Miss into those third and long situations, or even just third and medium. It seems like Oklahoma does just fine when they get into those situations, and then just limit any kind of explosive attacks. With Wright and Stribling specifically, I think Wallace, another one of those guys, that speedy guy on the outside, limit that, absolutely. All right, we could talk even more about Ole Miss's defense, but I don't see a whole lot on Ole Miss's defense. I think we talked enough about Oklahoma's offense. They're not great on defense and stopping the run, which I think Oklahoma can exploit, and they can do a really good job of doing. So I'm just going to kind of skip over Ole Miss's defense. I just don't think it's a defense worth really spending a whole lot of time and putting into a whole segment over talking about them. Look over at the chat real quick just to make sure, see what you guys are saying over here. Thunder OU Sooner says, Jimmy Satterfield, sometimes the ball bounces out of the hands when thrown to the Oklahoma wide receivers. We were talking about that and talking about Isaiah Satania. I feel like he's had that happen a few times here as of recent. Even Jaron Kanik has had that a couple of times recently, but we'll see. Wes May says Alabama offense will be the best offense they face. You're probably right there. I think that this Ole Miss defense is great in different ways. Excuse me. Than Alabama, but Alabama will be probably the toughest overall offense, just because they seem so well-rounded and they're able to do things their way. So, yeah, I think I agree with you, Wes. Anyways, make sure to drop your predictions in the chat, and we will try to get to those predictions because, I'm gonna jump to the predictions right now and see what you guys got for predictions. Stacy says 35-10. That is our resident Sunshine Pumper. 35-10 OU. I like that one, and I mean, I would love to see it. I know Johnny Johns would also love to see that, but he's saying 26-20, and he hopes that Stacy is right. And I hope that Stacy is right as well. Still hitting that under with Stacy's as well. So I like that. And I was looking it up too, so I had to look this up to make sure. Oklahoma has hit the under in all 7 games this season. Just saying. They scored 28 points per game while only allowing 9.4. Their average winning margin is 25.3 points. That's really good, really good. Ole Miss has also been really good and average winning margin at 18.7. The total game points for Oklahoma this season, 38.1. And it's just been amazing. I love this style of football that Oklahoma runs now with this defensive-led team. I love it. Anyways, Jimmy Satterfield thinks it's going to hit the over in this game at 30-24. That will slightly hit the over. I wouldn't put it past. I like that prediction a lot, Jimmy. I mean, I like everyone's predictions. I think everyone's pretty close. I really like Wes's prediction, hitting that. He's definitely smashing that under 19-16 OU. I just don't want it to be that close. It puts too much stress on me trying to watch that game. But anyways, I'll jump into it, kind of give some of my predictions. Let's get into it. Prediction time. Oklahoma is a 5.5-point favorite. That total sitting around 51.5. As I mentioned, I think the under hits. I really do. I think the under hits. And not by much in this game. I think this game has the possibility of going over. The main reason why I think the under hits, I guess the main reason is Oklahoma's defense. That's going to keep you under. But I think another key factor outside of Oklahoma's defense to hit the under is that it's predicted to rain right now. And so, you got to look at that. It's predicted to rain, and I will try to pull that up real quick to see if we got an updated forecast here. Ole Miss, Oklahoma, looks like we've got forecast. Hey, it's possible that it doesn't rain. It is possible, but most likely, if it rains, I think the under really hits, and kind of more like Wes's, what was that, 19-16 prediction there? That's much more likely, just because rain is going to cause both teams to run the ball a lot more, and I do think Oklahoma tries to run the ball a lot more. I think they try to keep the possession on their side and that is extremely crucial in this game, to keep the ball out of Ole Miss's hands. But let's first start off with some X factors in this game. I think Mateer's mobility starts to play into this game, because you need that run game to get going so badly. I think in the beginning of the season you relied on John Mateer to put up these crazy rushing stats. Now I just want to see him get involved in order to kind of throw teams off the scent of jumping on the running backs. I don't need to see John Mateer doing what he did against Michigan, where he's getting 20 carries, or however many it was, 17 plus carries per game. I don't want to see that at all. But I do want to see him get involved in the running game. So I want to see some mobility from John Mateer. And I think that's going to be crucial to help this rushing attack because it's going to keep the defense kind of guessing with having to pay attention to one more runner out there on the field. And then, of course, getting that extra blocker with your running back in that quarterback run game. I think the OU's offensive line health absolutely plays into it with multiple injuries out there. Is Oklahoma able to stay healthy there during this game? That's all you can ask for is during this game, stay healthy, do what you got to do. Because it's very crucial in this game to stay healthy. But then offensive line just to perform consistently the way that you did last week. What can Ole Miss do on the ground? What can Ole Miss do? Do they have the ability to run the ball against number one run defense in the nation, basically in Oklahoma? And for Lane Kiffin, this is a must-win game. How does he perform in this must-win game on the road? Historically, he's struggled in this situation in these must-win games, or sometimes even in games that aren't even really must win, but it's more or less it's obvious you should win. And this one is not an obvious you should win, but it's one that he really wants to win. It's a must win really for either team. Again, just to remain in the driver's seat and you still control your own destiny, where at 10, at the risk of 2 losses, you now have to win out in order to get to 10-2. Both teams have a pretty tough schedule in order to do that. So must win. I think it's same goes for Brent Venables in those must win games, or again, a lot of times those you should win games. You're not performing well. And so can Oklahoma keep their home game winning streak alive and just keep themselves alive here in this game against Ole Miss, keep themselves in the driver's seat? And a big X factor, I think, is the crowd energy. How energetic are Oklahoma fans? Because if it's rainy, even a little chilly, I know 60 degrees is very cold for some Oklahomans, for some Sooner fans, but that gives you every excuse, every reason to get up and move around even more, to get even more excited and scream, to warm yourself up. Yeah, we need to see an electric SEC type environment here in Norman. I think Torrey Blaylock goes off in this game. I think he has a career high game, not just tying his career high, but going off for, let's say, man, I want to see him go for 120 yards. I don't know if he'll reach 120 or not, but I do think he has a career high day. I think this is going to be one where Oklahoma needs to use him a lot more, therefore they will, and get him into a rhythm, and I think he's going to do some special things, maybe even a multi-touchdown game for him. Would that be his first of the season? I haven't looked that up. But a multi-touchdown game for him would be amazing. Oklahoma's defense holds Ole Miss, I'm going to say, under 300 total yards to be a little more lenient. I think, just holding them under 300 yards would be big because this is an offense that can put up yards at a high clip. But I don't even think that's that bold of a statement. Can they keep them under 250 total? That would be incredible. That would be really awesome to see and very difficult to do against this. I think Oklahoma gets a turnover in this game to really help with their momentum. Tate Sandell doing his thing, getting field goals. That's all Oklahoma really needs to win this game. I went back and forth on my score prediction all week. Wasn't really sure what to do here. I'm going to go Oklahoma wins 28-20. Ole Miss, I think Ole Miss has the capability to come out here and score 28 on Oklahoma. But I think this defense is just going to be relentless. I think they're going to be tough enough to stand up and stand tall against this very tough, very explosive, the toughest offense that Oklahoma has faced up to this point. So 28-20, mark it down in the books. That's my official score prediction this week. All right, let's jump over to the chat one more time real quick. Stacy says they have hit the under with mine every time I adjusted down. Yeah, I mean, I think, yeah, it's really been incredible, and I like hitting the under now, where before I liked being able to hit the over for Oklahoma, but it was like, would I rather see Oklahoma win 48-32, or would I rather see them win that 26-7, or if we can cut that down, 26-3, 24 to even winning 18-7, stuff like that. I mean, it's just low scoring games. I am finding extreme joy in the low scoring games as an Oklahoma fan, having a lot of fun watching this defense. They have been absolutely incredible. Every game OU plays here on out will be one possession games either way. Very well could be. You're probably right. And that's kind of where my prediction goes into play. I don't know if Ole Miss scores 2 touchdowns, and we'll get into our specific picks too here in just a second. Our prop picks here in just a second. Yeah, Stacy says they're forecasting heavier rainfall than yesterday. I hope that, I hope that's not the case, because I don't like crappy weather games. When I was a player, I used to love crappy weather games, but I don't like them anymore. I just want to see fair weather, go out there and perform well. It could be forecast. It could be, I don't want to see any rain personally. Wes says if conditions are nasty and wet, Mateer needs 15 to 18 carries. I don't think he needs them. I think he needs 10 design carries, just because I want to see the ability there for Oklahoma to be able to switch things up. But real quick, let's go over to our friends over at Underdog Fantasy. Underdog Fantasy has been a very fun way for us to get involved in the game, and you can go on there and make your picks. All you have to do is just make 2 or more picks of just selecting higher or lower on a single player's stats, and it goes very simply. We've been doing pretty well, and overall last weekend not too well, but it was just because the offense didn't have to do as much. I think actually no. I didn't mark it down again today, but I was looking at it, looking it up. We actually did well last week. It was 2 weeks ago. We didn't do too well. Everyone hit under, but the only reason why we didn't do perfect last week was because John Mateer didn't have to throw so much. We were able to see Oklahoma running the ball really well. So because of that, and because of the forecast, it kind of plays into our picks this week. We went 2 for 3 last week. So very good to see that. But you can also sign up for Underdog Fantasy. Just download the app. Click the link down in the description below to get signed up. That's the best way to do it. And then use the code VOCFBOU to play $5, get $50 in bonus bets. Must be 21 or older to play. Gambling problem, please call 1-800-GAMBLER. All right. Let's look at it real quick. Again, this is a really easy way. All you got to do is just play $5. You get $50 in bonus funds, and that $50 goes towards you being able to win hundreds, thousands, who knows, however much you think that you can win. And it's easy as making some picks on these players. So I'm going to pick. I think this week I'm feeling really confident that we go 3 for 3. I'm going with John Mateer. They've got him listed at 238.5 passing yards. I'm going to say under. First of all, Oklahoma's going to run the ball. They don't need John Mateer to pass the ball all that much. So they're going to run the ball. Plus the forecast. We're expecting rain. Why would we go anywhere else? We're just going to go, under. We're going to go lower. So lower than 238.5 passing yards for John Mateer, which I'm happy with that. If he can throw for 180 yards like he did last week, then we're doing all right. So, we like that because it's going to be a high rushing performance day, which is also why I look at Tory Blaylock, and they've got him listed at 55.5 rushing yards. We're hitting higher on that because I already told you, I think he has a career day. And if we wanted to go with more than 3, I might even go look at his touchdown total real quick, and see where he's doing there. Let's do that real quick. So rush/receiving touchdowns, 0.5. I mean, heck, we're going to throw in 4 picks this week because Tory Blaylock is getting into the end zone. And then, so with the 3 lock-in picks that we're going to go with is John Mateer lower than 238.5 passing yards, Tory Blaylock higher than 55.5 rushing yards, and I'm going to say Trinidad Chambliss lower than 1.5 passing touchdowns. I don't think he's going to pass for 2 touchdowns. He may pass for 1. I don't think he passes for 2. Man, I think Ole Miss scores 2 touchdowns. I don't think they score 2 through Chambliss passing the ball. So we're going to go under there or lower there. But Also, why not throw in Torrey Blaylock with a touchdown? So we'll throw that in there. We might decide to go out. Anyways, it's as easy as picking higher or lower. Check out Underdog Fantasy today. Either download the app, click that link down in the description below to get signed up. All you got to do is use the code VOCFBOU to play $5 and get $50 in bonus funds. Must be 21 or older to play. And if you got a gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER. It's very crucial. Do not go out here and be irresponsible with your money. But check it out. A lot of fun, very fun way to get involved in the game and just, feel like you're a part of it. So go check it out. Underdog Fantasy. Again, use that code VOCFBOU to play $5 and get $50 in bonus funds. All right. Anything else over in the chat? Let's see real quick. All right. Wes has kind of a longer chat here. He says, off topic, but could you see Lincoln Riley being interested in one of these, maybe many high profile, quote unquote, high profile jobs that are or will be open? We know he'll avoid the SEC, but would Penn State or Florida State tempt him? Maybe. I mean, if he was offered, I just don't think he's going to get offered. I think he lowered his stock a lot, honestly. I think I think him just not performing well. His defense isn't performing well. I do think that kind of cleaning house, you have to give him another season. So he goes into next season. If it's better there, then you make your decision there with Lincoln Riley. But he's kind of on the verge of a hot seat. His seat is pretty warm at this point because he keeps on going downhill every season. So I think that's kind of where I stand with Lincoln Riley. But I don't think he'll be a candidate for any of those jobs. But if they were to open, I could see maybe Florida State. If he was a candidate for it, I could see that, but I just don't think he'll really truly be a candidate for any of these jobs, just because I think the stock has gone down for him. So, yeah, I think so. Going back to Stacy, she says 3 OU defense turnovers. I hope so, Stacy. I hope so. I sure hope that's the case. Anyways, if you're watching anywhere other than YouTube right now, go over to the YouTube stream real quick, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. If you want to help support this channel, support this show a little bit further, become a member today for as low as $2.99 per month. It's not much. If you buy coffee, I just bought a coffee. It was just a plain black straight coffee. I think a 20-ounce coffee the other day from a coffee shop, and it cost me over $4. If you're buying a coffee in the morning, you can afford to support the show a little bit further. We're giving you guys live shows on Sundays, Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays. That is 5 shows. Support the channel here today by becoming a member, by clicking the link down in the description below. Just click join and or scan that QR code over on the side, bottom right-hand side of the screen. Anyways, we appreciate so much for everybody for tuning in. I know we keep on kind of going over. This was one I warned you ahead of time. We're probably going to go over on our typical hour-long show, but appreciate everybody so much for tuning in, for jumping in here. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Follow us on social media for more, and of course, go check out the Voice of College Football as well. But looking forward to a tough matchup here for the Oklahoma Sooners against Ole Miss here at home. Homecoming weekend, going to be a fun one. Excited to see how this one pans out. But that is all that we've got for you guys tonight. We'll catch you on the next one. Boomer.